preliminarily at the kindergarten and first grade enrollment for this year and the class sizes?
I did, but I can't project until I see how many are coming back. Because I can give you more if they stay back at conception. If I get the 35 back and it spreads out, I don't even know that yet. I may or may not be able to reduce the sections. So that's going to be a month, maybe 2 months away before I can give you any certainty with that.
Understood. I guess my question was, in terms of the enrollment as it is today,
It is on the chart as it is today.
If it remains constant, would you see additional sections being eliminated there? Yes. What would you estimate that number to be?
When I talked with Mr. Subers, I told him that I probably could find at least 3 more sections. I think your curtailment says anywhere from 4 to 7 for that, to have that cushion. So if nobody came back and the census was 100% or close to it accurate, you're probably looking at least 3 additional positions in kindergarten through second grade. Okay. Okay. So as the registration windows close, I'll keep the board updated on numbers and buildings that they are going to.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Any other questions? I'm the only one with questions.
I guess just in the interim here while people are processing, I know that's a lot to take in at one time. And again, for the benefit of the members of the public who are braving through yet another budget, remember this budget doesn't have to be approved until the end of June. So there's a long way to go and probably a lot of conversation. So for anyone that needs more information that you didn't get tonight to help process that, we will certainly provide that as needed.
Okay, I guess I had a couple other questions here on fund balance. Ms. Penza, do you recall over the last 3 years what we budgeted to use out of fund balance versus what we've actually spent out of fund balance?
Dr. Otto's second, third slide.
Well, I'm looking at the third slide. I see what we budgeted for the past 2. But what did we actually spend?
10, 11, I think was maybe. I don't know.
Danielle, you want to speak into the mic?
I'm sorry.
I don't have it here. I have to get that to you. I don't want to talk and not. Last year, I can tell you, was probably about 900,000.
We spent 900,000?
No, we budgeted 768. We didn't spend that. We actually had a
surplus.
Yes. The prior years, I don't have that on it, and I'd have to get that to you.
And this year, we budgeted 641.
And change. Yes.
And change.
I have a question about the library possible reductions. It's not really geared towards the proposed ones in this budget, but last year I know there was discussion. It ultimately failed. I think it got 1 vote to do something involving the libraries and to reduce spending. Can somebody catch me up to speed on what that was last year? You know what I'm talking about?
No, I maybe Mrs. Trainer does.
What we did was we reduced the high school and the middle school librarian to part-time, and then with that sort of, I'll call it the master elementary plan, there's a half a day-ish, almost at least a half a day, for each of the elementary librarians where they have been assigned to the middle school or the high school, and in the event nobody was available, then the facility is closed unless it's classrooms with a teacher. And so that was how they, we tried, I believe, at one point to ask the Department of Ed to actually eliminate librarians. That was on the table at one point for the middle school and the high school. And we were told that we needed the program available, and so that's when the decision was made to go half-time.
Just to help you, Connor, and anyone else who might, again, be new on the board or new to the conversation or forgot from last year, there's a very distinct difference between the word demotion in terms of this budget process and the word curtailment or furlough. A furlough is when you're actually eliminating someone's position, whether it be half-time or full-time, which then has to go through the curtailment process, which we're obviously have been asked to prepare resolutions for that for this evening. However, the district has at its discretion, without needing Pennsylvania Education Department of approval, the ability to demote someone from full-time to half-time just by board resolution. You do not need to solicit the state in any way, shape, or form.
I think what I would need to do, I mean, obviously we're looking at this information for the first time, and it's a lot to take in, and we're just trying to process it, but I think over the course of these budget workshops, I'd like to dive into each of these expenditure reduction options in detail and really get a better understanding and become more familiar with exactly what those numbers represent. I know you presented them, and I tried to take as many notes as I can, but I think I'd like to dive into these in detail and spend some more time in each one of these categories so that I can better understand exactly what they mean.
Well, whatever.
Let me give you an example. Let's start with the elementary curtailments for class sizes, the 276,000. Now, does that represent what you had mentioned, that it would be the second grade class at APC, the third and fourth grade class at AIC, and the second grade class at Monocacy?
Yes, it would represent furloughing of four elementary teachers.
What you presented for Birdsboro, the second grade class going to 36, the fourth 38, fifth 36, that's not part of that 276,000?
No, it's not.
Okay. So the first number, does everybody kind of follow
Yes,
that?
I'm with you.
No, I'm asking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Does everybody follow that? That first number, 276,000, would mean that we would, that would affect the second grade at APC, third and fourth at AIC, and the second grade.
Exactly, what Mrs. Trainer outlined for us.
Okay. Elementary band curriculum curtailment, 117,000. What does that mean?
There would be no elementary band.
No band,
None.
No instrument would go into a child's hand?
Not at our expense. I know when Governor
And
Mifflin...
instead, they would learn how to...
Well, no, that's a pull-out program, so they would be going back, they would just be getting regular instruction.
Yeah, what would that be? They would learn how to read music or read a note or...
No, they have their general music,
left?
they have the general music class now that we provide as part of the curriculum. The band is above and beyond that. So their participation in the band would essentially disappear.
Well, how about you just, I think we're, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. If I am, if I'm not, then let me know. But I guess I'm curious. So the general music class entails what versus band?
We actually have a textbook series that we just have one set of books for each classroom, but it includes learning about individuals who are involved in music. It's learning how to read notes. It's learning about different instruments, both what we use here in the United States and worldwide. It's learning some songs. It's all encompassing about just music. It's learning about different cultures and how music becomes part of the culture, songs that are tied to that. They only meet in a good year, like about 30 times. And so it's not a lot of instruction each year, but even at the kindergarten level, they learn very simple activities. And they also do some of the choral instruction during that time as opposed to pulling out the way we had done years ago. So there's a whole prescribed curriculum that's built from kindergarten all the way through 5th grade.
Mr. Sermonaro, if I could say it another way, the Chapter 4 curriculum requirements in the state of Pennsylvania at the elementary level require a music experience. I don't know the exact verbatim language in the statute. Included in that language is not the need to have a band.
Right. I understand.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand what these numbers represent.
Okay.
Not
that's a person and a half.
Its validity. Just what,
right.
What do they mean? I'm sorry. I got to back up a second. I forgot to ask one question on the elementary curtailments. I've got the Monocacy class size in second grade would go to 24. Can you give me the ones for APC and AIC again?
Sure. At Amity Primary Center, with my projected numbers and maintaining the same number of sections, it would be about 21 average.
Okay.
And if I remove a class, it would be about 24. And Monocacy, is that your other?
Monocacy is 24.
The two
Amity
Amity Intermediate and third grade, if I keep them as is with 7 sections, you're looking at an average of 21 to 22. If I remove a section, you're looking at 25.
Is that for third grade?
Yes. And in fourth grade right now, if I remain stationary with the sections, there'll be about 23 average. If I remove one, you're looking at about 27.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Trey, I have a question. Is that net of personnel? Would you suggest then that we hire aides? Since you're increasing class sizes, would you recommend putting aides back in that we cut this year?
At a minimum, absolutely, because
So then
once you
what-
get into
so
27,
my-
28,
so my
you're-
two- my-
especially in the lower classes.
So is this number net of adding aides back, or is it without aides?
No, this would be bare bones if you have to do it, and just staff will only be able to differentiate instruction as space and time permit.
So can you also then do a projection of how many aides you would recommend putting back in and give us a net number?
I didn't think that was an option, so I figured.
I didn't say it was an option, but for what I understand, everything's an option tonight, so why
I'd
not?
have to look at that with building administrators. What we came back with was if there was certainly
Again,
language arts is one. The other part of that is as you have more and more special ed inclusion and I'm not talking about your one-on-one age students, but
Correct.
just your emotional support and your learning support students. When you have 27, 28 in a class, it creates certain management issues.
well, that's my question. And again, I think everything's on the table, so add some back if you, in certain class sizes that are too big, or potentially
That
too
would
big.
certainly be at least a compromise if you had to do something, but it would reduce certainly your net.
Sure,
And the other
absolutely.
thing, just again for the point for new members, when Danielle and I take a look at giving you the figures for those curtailments, you're looking at the 4 most recently hired employees, and so you're looking at the least expensive, if you will, elementary staff members when we start to look at seniority and who would be eliminated in order to, there'll be shifting of staff assignments in order to fill that. So it isn't a person who's in that grade level right now, just in case you aren't aware of that. It would be recently hired individuals that would end up being furloughed.
And it is pending PDE approval.
Excuse me?
Pending PDE approval,
Yes.
Yes.
so again, it might not happen. Okay, thank you.
We did.
Again,
I
I'm
did
just
give
asking-
Mr. Subers the.
I know, but I'm
numbers
asking to make sure
tonight.
everybody understands that we can't do it on our own.
Right.
Okay.
So
Along
your
with band-
curtailments represent the numbers that I had
Okay.
shared with you, so they will be presented to the Department of Ed as
Okay.
average class sizes if they do award you that curtailment.
Along with band and world language, or foreign language.
All the band, foreign language, and class size
Okay.
reductions.
I have a question. Is the early retirement incentive still offered?
No, that was offered at the end as part of the concessions in May of 2011.
Okay, so it's tied in with the concessions.
And they had to, not that they had to, if they wanted some of the financial perks that went along with, letting us know early on where we got the 3 letters, there was a time frame that they had to do that. That's not to say somebody else wouldn't retire. It's just they wouldn't net the financial gain as part of the concession.
Okay.
There was an incentive, I'm sorry, there was an incentive that was put forward to induce people to retire early. And we had to give them a deadline to notify the board because we had other decisions we had to make vis-a-vis the budget. And in the absence of that knowledge, then we were going to start making cuts in other places. So we had to give them a deadline to notify the board that they were either going to retire or not retire. Not that they couldn't later, but in order to reap the benefits of the incentive, they had to let us know by a particular deadline that that's what they were going to do.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, Anne-Marie, did you have more you wanted to add to
I'm
that?
just going to share that I do send out each year the intent to return forms. They were out, and I would say about 85% are back. every so often somebody does indicate that, although, you know, that they've now decided to retire. To date, I have nobody that you do not know about that has indicated it, the professional staff. We do have some in the classified staff, but not.
I think, Mr. Trainer, I mean, one request I had, if you don't mind, Mr. Potts, and then I'll let you fire away. If you're going to provide a calculation for aides in the classrooms of a certain size, I guess if you could explain the rationale, I would imagine that you could certainly have more students in a 4th grade class than you could in a 1st grade class. And then the need for an aide would be higher in a class with, let's say, 4 special needs kids as opposed to one with 0, correct?
More time of a person, more time on task, if I would say that, as opposed to nobody.
Right.
You know, like if you had, let's say, 4 or 5 special needs individuals in a class of 28, then I would recommend that an aide would be in the room for at least your math and your language arts component. If you didn't have that mix of individuals, they might be able to be in there less time. We would have to build a matrix based on, once we have K to 5 numbers, what you were thinking as far as the professional demotions or curtailments. And then I would, like I did last year for you for the double bus runs, and then I could build a matrix as far as aides.
Okay. And would you be able to put that number out to the side as opposed to a net number that we're looking at? Have an add back number? You know what I'm saying?
Danielle and I can work on what that cost would be.
Okay. Thank you.
And that doesn't mean I can't ship some folks around that are now in those buildings. I just would need to take a look at that. I'll do that. I could do that probably better for you in March.
After you have enrollment numbers, right? Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Potts.
Middle school foreign language, is that a true net with Mr. Henkel having to move the children lateral to say?
It represents two individuals that are currently part-time would be furloughed, and that's what that represents. So what Mr. Henkel and I are currently doing is assuming those 2 individuals are not part of the equation and working with what we have left as a staff at the middle school in order to be able to just move people each period of the day around in order to meet those needs.
And you'll fill that void now?
Creatively, I think I've done it at this point. So it just, there's some other variables to it, but I have enough people that, yes, a 6th grade team, one period a day will see the same individual, and that team, it's only the beginning, I think, of years to come of creativity.
Wasn't that subject math, English?
They will be specifically subject certified, the ones that would move for any kind of support to the grade. We have them.
No, I think he's asking what would they actually be studying in place of foreign language?
Oh, we are focusing on trying to do something with our reading / like study skills. And we offer reading right now for academically at risk students. We have an encore and a core program. We would do something that would support them being successful in high school. We don't have that down on paper yet. We have to try to find the more bodies first. But we would put something very beneficial to the students in place.
I did hear reading and math was always another.
We just, we'll be adopting next year in the 6th grade a continuation of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade formal program. And so the other thing, actually next week I'll be with some of those vendors to see what extension, so that over years to come, what students start in 3rd grade and build up through would just be something supported in possibly 7th and 8th grade.
Thank you.
Do board members have any other questions on what's been presented so far?
And as I said, as those questions come up, we administratively will be happy to provide you with any further detail that you need. If it's individual phone calls that you want to make to us for further explanations, please feel free to reach out to Mrs. Trainer, to myself, or to Mrs. Penza.
I mean, do board members have any other additional thoughts or ideas in regards to this budget, areas that they want to consider?
I have a quick question. I I was wondering if it would be possible to provide us with a more detailed list of which activities cost the most, which cost less when it comes to the entire athletic/activity program at $384,700. If it could be broken down a little bit more, I'm not sure how much work that would take.
Well, I mean, you either have athletics or you don't.
Well, I don't know if we need to offer all or nothing. Maybe.
Well, Mr. McCullough makes a good point. I would be careful if you become selective with this sport versus that sport with Title IX, with other issues. I think it almost becomes from I hate to say it again, it's not a recommendation, but from a legal standpoint, it becomes a lot cleaner, all or nothing, than to say, well, we're going to have only one sport. I mean, you'd have to have at minimum at least one female and one male sport in each season. So then you'd get into the discussion about, well, should we cut football or soccer? Should we cut? I mean, I don't know if you want to get into that level of detail with the discussion.
Well, I don't think we should. I don't know about eliminating everything. I don't think. Of course, we're not talking about that, right?
Right. I mean, that's for further conversation. But to go to your question, I think it might be a little easier, and Mrs. Penza, correct me if I'm wrong, to give you a more itemized list of the. I mean, we have individual budgets for sports and things like that. I mean, that's available. So if that's the kind of level of detail that you need, we can certainly get you that.
I think the issue that we ran into, last year when the subject was broached, maybe even the year before that when we talked about athletics and extracurriculars in general, was, the board doesn't want to be in a position where it's picking and choosing which sports stay and which sports go, or which activities stay and which activities go. I don't want to be in that position of making a decision saying, well, this one based on the merits somehow is more important to keep versus that one. Who are we to make that kind of decision, I think. I think the other point is, in terms of cost, how are you going to look at it? Is it the total cost of the program? Is it a cost per student for the program? I mean, there's several different standards that you can look at to measure what the actual cost of a program may be. And, do the costs then justify, the activity? And it's not usually, a lot of those activities, the costs are based on the contracts that we have. It's based on tenure of the coaches or tenure of the person that's been, that's the activity advisor and things of that nature. So it's not necessarily based on the activity itself. It's based on who's in charge of administering that activity. So there's a lot of different variables there that's tough to wade into, I think. I think what happened last year was the administration went back and said, well, we're going to break it out, high school versus middle school, extracurricular, like club activities versus athletic, band versus, and we could look at it in terms of groups, which I think they've done here in this PowerPoint for you.
And the purpose in bringing it forward, just as I know the conversation is probably going to head down the path of what do we have to do, what don't we have to do. Extracurriculars are we don't have to. We always have, but we don't have to. So
I have information from when we did the activity fees committee, and I'll forward all that information to you regarding the cost at that time for what the sports and activities were.
I have one other thing. At the BCIU board meeting on Thursday, I spoke with the president of another district, his board, and he mentioned that they're probably, well, not probably, but there's an option that they might just go back and tell their departments cut 5% of your budget and do that across the board. I don't know if that's something we've looked at. I don't know if it's something we should look at. I just thought I'd bring it to the attention of our board and see if they thought.
A quick answer to that would be when we supplied you with the that portion of the budget, what I call the stuff versus the staff, we had already, I think, imposed, a 2% reduction on that already. It's already 2% lower than last year.
What we ended with last year, which was a significant drop from what we started.
And again, I'm not discounting anything. I'm just, your final dollar amount on that is not going to, I don't think, give you the return that you're looking for, but it's certainly obviously open to consideration, as everything is at this point.
Is there any merit in the light of discussing potentially completely eliminating something? Is there any merit in talking with other school districts and having some sort of combined effort so you can still offer that type of whatever that potential thing is that it's going to get eliminated, that we could maybe do it by doing it along with another school district?
I mean, that's a tough question. The only way I could answer it is to the degree that the other district is willing to, first of all, enter into that kind of situation. And the second thing would be that they are experiencing the same kind of reduction that we are. So for those two things to line up, I can't really comment if that were to happen. So I mean, I wouldn't say yes or no to that. I think it's something for consideration and something we can certainly look at.
I think it's a good idea.
Or if the reverse were true, we could keep the programs if we allow other students from other districts to come into our school to do some of these programs.
More like a consortium kind of thing is what you're talking about.
Maybe you can float that, go to superintendents. I don't know.
I think it's a good idea. Any other comments? I shared with the board some enrollment numbers that I had asked Ms. Trainer to prepare for us, and I guess I've been sort of thinking about this a lot in terms of class sizes and you know, cutting programs and things of that nature, and you know, what would an alternative be to cutting extracurriculars or aides or teachers or whatever the case may be. If we're reducing sections and our enrollment overall has declined over the last 5 years, when I'm looking at our enrollment figures, it looks like we're back to where we were in 2005, 2006, prior to building the MEC building. And then a couple of years ago, we actually shut down APC and moved all the students over to the MEC building. So I'm wondering if there's extra capacity here in our facilities where we could close a building and reallocate the students to other elementary schools, since that seems to be where we have the most number of students. We did it once a couple of years ago when enrollment was considerably higher. Wouldn't that make sense to take a look at that again? Now that enrollment's considerably lower, we should have even more capacity.
If that would be the direction that the board would like to go, I would suggest that we would begin a study of all of that this year. Because I don't think it would be something you could implement this current year, especially when I think there are specific state regulations revolving around closing down a building. But if that's a direction that the board wants to go, my recommendation is that we begin that process looking ahead to next year and beginning to do whether you're going to have to redistrict, whether you're going to have to incur less or more transportation costs, what the staffing implications would be if that were to happen. Frankly, what building you might be targeting if that were to happen as well is a consideration. So those are all things that I think need very, very thorough and not, I want to say long-term, but certainly a longer study than just one budget season. I would think that by the time you got to next year's budget season, you would want all those questions answered to see if that is something that you could put on the table.
I mean, I throw that out there, particularly since we have new board members here. I mean, 2 years ago when we closed down APC and we were talking about actually not reopening it, and I'm not going to pick on APC, I'm just, the number that was thrown at us was around $356,000 in savings if we kept the building closed. So I look at that number thinking, you know, you got $350,000 versus, you know, whatever some of these other distasteful choices might be. I think it's worth taking a look at, you know, closing down a building as opposed to maybe increasing class sizes, or closing down a building as opposed to getting rid of the middle school band program. That's sort of where I was going with my thoughts on this. I'm sharing them with the rest of the board on that. But I would like to see some sort of facility study done to determine what our current capacity is versus use, and then maybe get a recommendation from the administration as to what building, if any, would be an option for us to consider and what the savings might be.
The problem that I see, and it just keeps jumping out at me, and it's just more of a comment, but when you look at our budget and 46% is salary, 17% is benefits, and we're reducing our employees, and then it looks like from 2012 to 2013, even with less employees, we're still paying more.
That's correct.
So we're up to 47. So I see that as more of an issue. If we
That's predicated on contracts that you have to meet. That's predicated on your contractual obligations.
We'll go percentage higher if you cut stuff.
Pardon me?
It will be a higher percentage than 9 that if you cut other things. out of your
It's
budget.
crowding out everything else.
It's
So
crowding out everything else. Of course, if you were left with only salary and budgets, it's going to go up.
You might want to
Not to
speak into the
mention
mic so
salary-
people
not
out
to
there
mention
can
salary
hear you.
increases.
Right, and that's,
So it's twofold. Plus, there is contracts.
right. So, I mean, but next year, after getting rid of everything that we might have to get rid of, we're still going to have to face that issue again.
yes, yeah.
That's a quick summary of the budget process.
Well, it's just, and our kids are going to have more and more students in the classroom.
I mean, clearly the issue is, look, our salaries and benefits are increasing at a rate that exceeds our ability to pay. And so our alternatives are cut programming, cut extracurricular activities and other things, shut down, close down buildings or close down the things that we have control over. We don't have control over the debt. We don't have control over our contribution to PSERS. We don't have control over, healthcare costs. And we have contractual obligation in terms of the salaries that we pay. So last year we were able to negotiate some concessions there, and that worked out to the benefit of the school district and allowed us to save some programming. So, hopefully we'll have discussions this year and they'll be fruitful, and that'll make some of these other decisions go away. But I think until our committees have an opportunity to sit down and start working, we'll have to deal with the choices that we have right now.
What we'd like to not see is paying more and getting less.
Right.
And the benefit, really no benefit, and it's actually a penalty to the kids. So.
We are getting to, with some of the things that we put on the table just to look at, if they were to become reality, you're looking at some pretty serious cuts in program.
What? Yeah, I'm just going to do that now. Is there any comment from the public at this time on this budget workshop? I'm just going to give you guys a couple of minutes, 3 minutes per person, and we're going to cap it after 10 minutes that we can move on to the voting meeting.
Shane Cockle, 830. My question is on, it's not the project funds. This is the first I've heard of the project funds account. Is that the capital reserve account?
No, essentially there's funds that were set aside to build this building, the stadium, Monocacy, and other places, and not all those funds were used. But before those things can be closed out, you can't allocate those funds to any other use. They're set aside specifically for those purposes. So now that those projects are completed, and imagine that had to do with some of the Plan Con J and G and K filings that we made, that those funds are now available for, I suppose, one or two options. Either A, use them, set them aside for, again, capital purposes, because that's what the bond issues were set for. Or B, you can use those funds to pay down the debt service on those capital expenditures. So I think what was being proposed tonight was that there was $900,000 that may be available to be used for the debt service. We have $6.9 million of debt service annually. You could take $900,000 and use it this year one time only and reduce that debt service payment to $6 million as opposed to $6.9. You're floating the difference. I suppose you could also use it to pay down, because you can't pay down the principals because the bonds have certain restrictions in terms of refinancing. So we'd either have to set it aside for capital projects, future capital projects, replacing a boiler, replacing a roof, whatever may come up, or we could consider using it as part of our operating budget this year in terms of our debt service payment.
Okay, so it's not sitting in the capital reserve, it's actually moved over to...
I think the answer is no. Good question.
It's not sitting in capital reserve, but the board report that's presented each month, there's a capital project spreadsheet. It's broken out to capital reserve and capital projects. It's the capital project piece. It's the bond money piece.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Would it be safe to say, I think, Shane, just before you go, if any of those projects that those funds are remaining had cost any more money, that number would be less. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Right, there were savings in
right.
bids.
So there were savings in bids and savings on the projects that whichever projects they were, had those projects been higher, that money wouldn't even be there for us to access.
Okay, because I just remember it was always brought up that you couldn't use that money for anything. It was just,
It's not capital reserve.
No, and that's to your question, Shane, it's not capital reserve.
Right.
So you can do what we suggested with it.
okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see anybody else coming up to the podium. All right, we'll take a few minute break here, and then we'll move on to the voting meetings, 7:30. Okay, thank you.
Stand adjourned.